So welcome everyone. This is the issue 4.2 launch party for Chestnut Review. I'm really pleased to be here today with contributors, staff, and our editors, including our editor-in-chief. So it's really a pleasure to be here and see everything come together. The issue is very much a collaborative and longstanding process. So from reading your piece of the queue to shortlisting it, to deciding to accept it for publication, into production and launch, there's a lot of moving pieces, and we could not do it without the input of our readers and our editors and working together in concert with you to make the issues amazing. So everything is live on our site now, and this video will be recorded and uploaded to the site as well, so that you can share it with people. So thank you so much for signing up and for being here today. All right. I am going to pull up the issue because I forgot. So basically what we do here is, if you would like to follow along with the readings, I will be linking what piece that we are doing in the chat so that you can follow along with that. And of course, if you are reading your own piece, you can have that on your screen however you like. If it's a staff read, I'll be calling on the staff who's going to read your piece. Right. Okay. Hi. iPhone. Can you hear us? Yeah. I'm going to put people on mute unless they're speaking, but I will. All right. So our first piece is actually by Isabel Owens, and she could not be here today. So her piece is called Busted Cantaloupe Pilgrim. The orange meat is splayed open in the parking lot of Whole Foods, angry and naked like the corpse of a virgin. Minivan moms go stomping through with their galoshes. They leave sticky prints in the grass. Ants frack the soil for their queen's supper. Gold has been struck. The queen is now whiskey drunk off glucose. The venom in her pincers runs sweet. Her drool sinks into the earth, into magma. Sunset blends with sunset, and loam descends to mantle. An underwater volcano spits it out off the coast of Australia. The corals are going chalky gray. Along the reef, a surviving clownfish feels faint, haunted by asphalt, the drone of car engines and crack pipes. Another life flashes before its eyes, seeds and fingers and hot red moons. The knives slice fire into metal and obsidian into rust, bricks bundled like runt babies. Our world, a cavity along a candy necklace, bleed, juice into blender, potion into gut, held between incisor and oblivion, click jaws into flesh, melt. All right, cute. So next up is going to be Jessie Sechnowitz-Lim with her piece, Semper Augustus.
Hi, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to read my piece for you. I'm sorry, there's a little background noise. I'm just going to wait a second while my daughter goes downstairs. Okay. Semper Augustus. I can believe that tulips were once worth much more than gold, that the beauty of a broken bloom moved the sinews of men dressed exclusively in black with silver buckles. Semper Augustus wore red and white stripes, left them open-mouthed, a pepperminted sweet, white cracked like an egg, showing the blood of birth inside, the drama of carnal coloring, a simple vein calling to mind the spark of embryonic sash. The yolk laying on the shoulders of gams wishers. The word tulip means turban, and the leaves like sheaths of prayerful hands. is to pray to supplicate or to sacrifice oneself to the antediluvian pull of petaled poetry written with a pen only a creator could fathom. I like the idea of a status symbol rolled in dirt and quick to perish. How humble it seems compared to self-driving cars or meta-universes, the romance of a flower with hardly a scent. A tulip keeps growing after it's cut, keeps opening and closing as night stalks day. It sleeps and wakes with its watcher, getting longer and longer, leggy, we say, as it creeps farther from the vase, searching out the golden coins of sun. Heads rolled when the market crashed against the northern shores. Bulbs betrothed to futures were exposed to be marauding garlic or shallots, their oniony breaths caught stinking of hope for ease. We shun those who search for ease, but really, why should we? Isn't it hard enough to push through the soil, to come back every year?
It's just beautiful. Thank you. That was a wonderful reading. Thank you. Next up is Paying for It by Lana Hall.
Hi, everyone. So nice to see some faces here, even though we're not in real life here. I'm just going to pull up my document. Okay. The night bylaw officers raid our massage parlor. We flee out the back like ants, snow crunching underfoot, sequins flashing under our winter coats. It's a slow night, and there's nothing criminal about sitting in the dressing room of a massage parlor. But I follow the lead of my coworkers, fleeing not just the law, but the strangely intimate rituals of being policed. Once, I saw Hannah in the hallway during a raid, shivering in a bedsheet as an officer wrote her a ticket for being underdressed. You couldn't pay me to do your job, he said, the sound of the ticket being ripped from the pad like a whip. Wading through the parking lot, Martina grabs my parka and yanks me down behind a truck with her. The briefest of seconds, a bolt of glee flashes through my body before it collides with something that makes my stomach clench. We're out here because we've taken a wrong turn, one of the worst things. Back inside, a wall of men is waiting to remind us of this. We watch some coworkers hop the fence and scatter across the street, probably heading to the 24/7 coffee shop, where they'll have to dodge truckers' advances for the next hour. Aisha's still in a room, doing who knows what with her client. Godspeed to her. The auto body shop beside the parlor is closed, so we settle in behind a bank of rusted out cars and check our phones, waiting for the all clear. I feel Martina's breath on my neck, smell the burnt caramel of her body lotion as we watch the crack of light coming from the parlor's back door, the cold rippling across our exposed skin. What a load of shit, she says. If I had a cop on my massage table, he'd enjoy it just as much as any other man. In high school, I had a job cleaning rooms at a 2-star motel. Regina, our head housekeeper, warned me the maintenance guy would snatch housekeepers' tips from the nightstands before they could pocket them. Sun leaked through tattered curtains as we cleaned, pools of coffee grunge, discarded syringes, a nacho explosion trapped in shag carpet, and Gina's bony dish rag hands scrubbing away the flash of faded tattoos on her forearms. I use those goddamn tips to buy snacks for my kids, she muttered. But we needed that job, and the maintenance guy knew it, so we let it slide. We all figure out how to survive, one way or another. Before I learned how to take the money and run, I learned how to give it up. The entire strip mall's gone dark for the night, and soon we will too. We're doing math in our heads, hoping we made enough money earlier on shift, because even after the officers leave, slushy footprints and the red glow of electric bulbs in their wake, the parlor will be a dead zone. Word gets out fast, and nobody's looking for a good time if they know law enforcement's out. Behind us, the main drag stretches out, where during the day, fuel tankers rattle along. Drivers in pickups cut between highways, swerve into drive-thrus for food they devour, hunched at the wheel. salt and grease staining their palms. It's a road people only take on their way somewhere else. Awash in darkness, it defies time and place. A reminder that we don't always know which detour we'll take as we move through the world. I pull my gaze from it and catch Martina's eye. Suddenly, we're laughing. We try not to blow our cover, grabbing each other's arms in hysteria, muffling the sounds on our jacket sleeves. But this only makes us laugh harder. It feels so ridiculous. The idea that every life choice we've ever made has led us to this moment. Huddling in the dark, half naked behind a thicket of junk cars, hiding from a bunch of officers who are probably just trying to pay their own bills and head home to the early morning oatmeal in quiet lawns of their suburban homes. Giddiness blooms in the cold winter air, tangible as the clouds of our breath. Wiping her eyes, Martina lights a cigarette and takes a drag, burgundy lipstick staining the end. The moon is high. Nobody can touch us. Thank you.
Oh, Lana, that was a beautiful reading. I love how many details and the tone, right? There's humor, there's suspense, there's surprise, just so many different moments in one piece. Thank you. So next up, we have Abdul Jalal Musa Aliu's poem, Delineation of a Woman's First Child as Her True Religion, which we read today by our poetry editor, A.R. Salangi.
Okay. When Boko Haram beat the drums of jihad, my brother with a university degree, high-paying job and family that worshipped him joined the dance. That was when it dawned on me that belief, like wildfire, destroys every single leaf of seasoning that sets foot on its field. Sadness flitted on our mother's skin like a moth, and that made me remember when I protested that the difference between the love she had for my brother and me was like the distance between heaven and earth. And she said, with a smile wide enough to drown the history of mankind in its fount, that a woman's first child is her true religion. Now we fill our mouths with a handful of silence when we dine, for every word we speak reminds us of him, of how his jokes cut through everyone else's like a sword, of how he would taste everyone else's food except father's, like the content were dissimilar, of how after he graduated, before every meal, we had to whisper into God's ears his need to be richer than Dangote. Our father once asked that we prayed to God to bend his heart towards the truth, towards his love that was threatening to transform our household into a graveyard of silence. Before a word could fall from anyone's mouth, mother's tears had dropped on the dining table. That was the first time I saw proof of heartbreak, like a full moon in a blue sky. It is disheartening, like death, how one person's decision could set a whole family on fire. You see, I deleted all the social media platforms on my phone, for how could I hold on to the devils that made a monster out of my brother? 2 years later, he dropped into our home, tattered as though flung by hurricane. Mother fell into the arms of her long-lost son in tears of joy, and father stood like a statue, paralyzed by surprise laced with ecstasy. He did not make use of more than 20 words in 24 hours, in his new dialect of half sign language and half muteness. I saw happiness fading away from my parents' faces like a hatchling's skin, and when we sat down to eat, he said no. Words should crawl towards why he left. He had sunk all his jovial essence in a pit that screamed of sadness. I do not know how to say, without my words carrying shadows of resentment, that I crave the company of my brother whose spirit was murdered by this stranger. When we woke the following day, he left us a letter that read, "You infidel should walk back to God." My mother locked herself in her room, sopping in the waters of grief and tears. And when my father hugged me, our tears drenching each other's shoulders, I whispered in his ear, "Your other son is dead, and we need to find a way to bury him." in a cemetery far away from our hearts. I just want to apologize for those interruptions. I kept having like flashes come up on my screen. That's why I was a bit disjointed from notifications, but all the poems in this issue, Marisol and I absolutely loved, as we had the most input on. And I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to read their fantastic work. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, no, thank you, both of you. The poetry in this issue has just been phenomenal, and I'm so happy that some of the poets are here to enjoy it today and bask in the glow. Also, that was a great reading. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just a stunner poem. It's a long poem. So next up we have Vishwatarsham Mohanty's poem Jinn and Men, which will be read by Brooke Randall, our prose editor.
Hello, everyone. I read a lot of prose in a given year, so this is a real treat to get to read poetry today. By a fire in a Bedouin camp, not far from date fronds, kawa dripped through sky's fine mesh, trickled through the Milky Way into cups, emanating fumes of cardamom, coffee, and stories that cracked with embers on which jinn danced. Jinn, the beings of fire, tolerated men and their stories, for the two beings shared same longings, same vices, same wickedness. Behind the row of men and tents were lines of dunes that shifted in day and ruminated at night. They were simpler creatures, made neither of mud nor fire, but of sand. Sand that rises in dervishes, dribbles into an hourglass, filling emptiness, sprouting tents of glass and steel, stacked one on top of the other. From their perches in one such tent, men and women inhale foamy decoctions and through a screen of clear sand, watch sand drape over what remains of their horizon. Jinn still lurk in the desert and in leather-bound Alif Layla wa Layla and turn blue in Hollywood musicals. They also skulk in the city, in windowless massage parlors under red-blue neon signs, flashing open in not so dark alleyways where men ask, how much?
Thank you for that reading, Brooke. It was really wonderful. What a gorgeous piece. Great. So next, we have a poem, which is The Long Call of Yearning by Kita Nofo. And I've had the pleasure of working with him with editorial feedback and also in workshops. So it was really great to see you in this issue too. Yeah.
It's great to be part of this issue. Thank you so much. A big thanks to you, Maria and Anthony, for all your help and support. And yeah, it's great to be hearing all these other pieces that are in the work coming before. It's very humbling too. So this is great stuff in this issue. All right, so here we go. The Long Call of Yearning. Everything that comes from wishing is foreign to us, Seneca. Drizzle obscures sunset as if it had never fully risen. A legato call stills the charcoal hillside, a dripping staccato response. Owls make argument and chanting in the botanical garden, carved out of the town by a surveyor, while an excision chart is drawn around my palate's cancer site. Your reason to live? To raise my son with love and compassion. After a boundless night, I woke the sun. It glided past my petition with burning indifference. Without a word, I struggled to catch breath. I'll stand with it, to true my shadow at noon, to accept that life knows usefulness and beauty only by cutting the long call of yearning short.
Wow, what a stunning poem. I really love the mood and yeah, the Seneca quote. That's just really great reading. Thank you. So next up we have Last Communion by Joan Glass.
Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to be in this issue. It's a gorgeous issue, and this poem was a very difficult poem to write, like a lot of the other poems that I'm hearing. So I appreciate sharing this space with you very much. This poem is Last Communion. Here I am, kneeling again before a man who tells me I can be holy while insisting that nothing is permanent, not even my precious sins. I am washed in the blood, longing for something sacred, tongue hanging over my bottom lip like a dog. I like to read between the lines of obituaries, try to guess what their family members left out on purpose. You can tell a lot by what isn't there. For example, vague obit of healthy teenager, death by overdose, 50-year-old mom who was a brave warrior, breast cancer, 30-year-old male donations to NAMI in lieu of flowers, suicide. My sister was an asshole, and now she's dead. Though her life ended at 37, I wrote her eulogy as though she died at age 9, because that was the last time she wasn't an asshole. And I wanted to say something true without pissing everyone off. Here's the thing. If all we have to do to erase our gravest mistakes is take communion or stop breathing one day, what is keeping us from making them all, from relishing each one, knowing in the end they will not define us? When I die, please tell everyone the truth about me, that I walked around this place believing I was a little better than most, that twice I turned away from true love out of pride, revered books more than men, that I did, in fact, have a favorite child. While you're at it, reveal this truth about us all, that each of us has secrets we take to the grave, things we want to admit, but are certain no one wants to hear. Tell them that the very last time I ever took communion, I closed my lips around the priest's finger, let him feel my hot tongue against his skin, and he let me. Thank you.
Jonah, I have chills everywhere, up and down my body. I love this poem so much. I was so excited when you submitted, and thank you for sending this work to us. We're really, really honored to host it. Yeah. Right. So we did have a couple people who couldn't be with us today who sent their regrets. Rachel Lastra, she's the author of the piece Decay, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but it's a prose piece that I will let you read and find from this issue. And Eileen Tamarchio, who couldn't be here, and her work is going to be read today by our prose editor, Nadia.
Thanks, Greg. Sudden evolution. Oh, hello, whale, my daughter calls out to the sky. I look up at a thunderhead just blocking the sun, low riding with bucket dumps, a blot on a beach day. I hurry her into the boardwalk arcade with its musty sea critter carpeting and tumbling bells like pocket change. We buy Italian ices and play Jurassic Park pinball and wait for the thunder cracks. Alice knocks the pinball machine with her tiny hip bones, buoyant, eager for the storm. I only feel the heaviness of low pressure. I wonder why she talked to the sky like she did, since she's never been one to see shapes in clouds. Since she's more earthbound, a digger, always excavating for the worst, brushing the dirt from the quieted voices she hears, the scrolled headlines lifted intact, the TV, my phone, my ex. Rare right whale spotted in Shrewsbury River, tangled in ghost nets. Humpback near Barnegat Light, struck dead by freighter. Breeding cows starve due to diminished herring stocks from warming Atlantic. It's hard to talk around the worst while she's in earshot, to use sighs, tisks, hms. When she probes, I can only shrug or deflect because I don't have answers and can't pretend that I do. To cure her of her scowling jags, I help her find books about whales at the library. She loves measuring our land creature smallnesses against their immensities, reciting breathless factoids as if awe on its own is enough to solve all problems. Whale song that can drift 10,000 miles, sperms boasting the largest brains ever on Earth, blues big enough to swallow 2 brachiosauruses, 3 woolly mammoths, 4 tyrannosauruses, big enough to be clouds. My own awe comes out forced next to hers, my sincerity a shell. She wants more from me, I know, so that I'll be right alongside her. But I can't get there as much as I try. I throw compliments heavenward as a way to mask my copping out. She's made of better stuff than I am. Her generation will save us all. If I were her age, my marine life icon would probably be SpongeBob. I make Alice into something older, a creature not from me, because how else could such a fluke, such a wonder, share my DNA? From inside the arcade, we hear odd sounds, the gasps and cries of boardwalkers, yet no pelt of raindrops, no thunder. Alice takes my hand and leads me out into the dimmed daylight, our steps floaty. It's clear the storm is no storm at all, but an exchange of water for air, molecule by molecule, droplet by droplet. We look up to see a cetacean sky, humpbacks and rights and sperms and blues, belugas and narwhals in rows like scales in mackerel clouds. And above the whales, the old sky, now the stratosphere. Spouts from blowholes that dart like comet tails, true clouds slight as brush strokes, a shrunken, liquid sun, all so distant from here at the bottom of a sea that is slowly giving birth to itself. Out of reflex, I lick my Italian ice. It dissolves to salt on my tongue. Alice levitates from the boards, laughing, waving her hands fin-like up at the whales. She's not scared, not at all. Her awe is immense. So immense it seems to suck what oxygen is left around me. My lungs strain. I ask her what'll happen to us. Tiny bubbles trapping my voice. She gives a hurried answer in words interspersed with whistles and clicks. Something about how since whales were once land walkers, the same logic could mean we humans will have new, larger lungs to stay underwater without drowning. I want to tell her this is impossible, that evolution doesn't work that way, so fast. But I can't say this because the world has turned more water than air, and bubbles can't hold my words anymore or contain my ignorance. So this must be what dying out is, I think, remembering a video I saw once. The history of Earth in 3 minutes, charted eastward from Los Angeles to New York City. Humanity emerging at the tail end, in New Jersey, from under the Hudson, peaking in Midtown Manhattan. And then the afterward, the assumed next notch on the timeline, our drowning in the East River at 3 minutes and some odd seconds as a new epoch rises. I look around at all the shore people, so confused and puffed and large-eyed, lost in schools of herring and squid, in drifting gyres of arcade prizes and whack-a-mole mallets. From far away, a mournful sound reaches my rupturing eardrums. It's Alice, singing right next to me. She gazes with one marble eye, her fusing feet swishing like a tail, building force. I know she's pleading with me to evolve with her, but all I can do is shrug and make shreds of the Italian ice paper cup, release them like ghost guppies. I feel whittled as driftwood, the dead end of a branch. Before I can touch the baby barnacles on her skin, Alice launches herself up toward the surface. I make a hollow effort to follow in her slipstream, to catch up, but only get so far with my feeble kicks, with the crush of fathoms above me. Her song trails behind her, faint. I blink and blink to see her better, tears becoming ocean. My daughter, about to breach for air, and a whale cow, brushing close, taking her for her own, as if it's the natural order of things, as if she were always hers, never mine.
Thank you, Nadia. Sorry that I'm being hugged by a cat. Amazing breathing. So I really am in love with this issue. I'm very sorry that none of our visual artists could make it today. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about this whole issue and all the pieces in it. So I really hope that you check it out. Yeah. So what we do now is a little bit different than maybe some other launch parties that you've been to. So we normally open the floor up for questions. And the way that we do this is kind of the following. So you can feel free to either in chat or just unmute yourself and ask a question to another writer or to somebody on staff, and kind of vice versa. So the staff questions can just be for CR as a whole. They can also just be directed to a particular genre. We have all of our genre editors here today, so that's great. Plus me and James. So yeah, that's usually how things work. And I know that sounds really kind of strange and unusual. So if you haven't seen one of our launch parties before, I can model that. And I'm going to pick on Brick and Nadia.
Maria,
Yeah.
Maria, I think there's still one more piece to read, at least on the prose side. Yeah. Mike, you haven't read An LSAT of Culture yet, have you?
I haven't, but I think I'm good with the not reading.
Okay, just wanted to make sure you had an opportunity. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I did. I reached out to him, and that's completely fine. Great. Yeah. So yeah, I want to pick on you guys just to start. Yeah, I want to know a little bit about Chi-Chi and I, and what the selection process was like for that piece, because that's a piece that we haven't kind of had mentioned today. And that's a very beautiful piece, one of my favorites. So yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that and the editing process it went through, perhaps, just like what the submission process looks like for you two.
Okay, great, simple, easy questions. So on the prose side, we create a short list. Poetry does the same. And this was a piece that caught our readers' attention right away. So we did shortlist this one, and it had some time. We got a lot of reader feedback on it. And then we have a shortlist meeting to discuss all of the pieces. And we do spend a lot of time thinking about how they work together, because we really want a diverse issue where we're showing a lot of different voices. We want a balance between fiction and nonfiction, prose and flash. And this was a piece that worked really well with some of the other ones you've already heard today. And when we were excited to work on, Nadia and I split the pieces. So there's one primary editor for each one. And we do put a lot of editorial work in the pieces. And I had the pleasure of working with the author on Chi-Chi and I. It was in a really great shape. We don't choose pieces that we want to alter completely. We choose pieces where there's like something beautiful about them that we want to keep. And maybe we think we can help refine a little bit, but that's mostly there. And that was definitely the process. I think there's probably only 4 kind of back and forths on that piece. And it was in a pretty great place and was ready for copy editing. So it was a really simple process, which was really lovely to work with the author on.
Thanks, Brooke. That was very comprehensive. So sorry to put you on the spot. Yeah, Joan kind of has a follow-up question about the curation of pieces and how that looks. So maybe if one of the poetry editors could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, sure. So I think the curation, I think Marisol will agree on this, but I think like the curation is, yeah, it kind of just, it really varies between each issue. I think like I'm really, really happy with the selection of writers we're getting, because it will be a year for me as an editor in January, and I think we've seen this progression in the type of writing that we receive. And I feel like we're receiving more hard-hitting work in the sense that I appreciate lots of forms of poetry, but I like writing that really, is critical. Like Joan's poem, for example, that was critical of religion and Christianity, that was critical of men, which is something that the poetry side of CR will always be behind, which is a critique of men. And I absolutely love writing like that. I also feel that, for example, had a piece by there was Semper Augustus as well, which is one of my favorites. I love this issue because I love Latin and I study conversational Latin for fun. So I love that little involvement there. And then Guy's piece as well, I worked on with him with editorial feedback. So many of the writers that are here, the people we publish, same with Abdul Jalal as well. I feel like we get to know more about them through the process, even if it's just learning about them after we accept it or working on their writing through editorial feedback in general. It's so interesting to me to go through this kind of process where we select pieces that are hard hitting. But to answer it kind of simply, I guess, is that it kind of just happens, Joan. We receive so much writing, but if it's strong and it just sticks out, like your poem exactly. So I hope that kind of answers the question. But yeah, I think my job at CR is something I just really love at this point. So yeah, Marisol, do you have anything to add about the selection process with curation and stuff?
You pretty much said it all, but I would agree that I like pieces that are provocative. I think Joan's piece was amazing. I really loved Abdul Jalal's piece. You guys both kind of mention or talk about moms kind of having a favorite child, even though they never say that, so it's nice. It's thought provoking when you think about religion, when you think about death, when you think about the way your siblings grow up, and those are all things that kind of bounce between cultures, but then like intersect in certain places. So it's relatable, but it's also unique, and becomes somewhat cosmopolitan.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's very illuminative of the process that we kind of go through. I mean, we do receive a lot of submissions, so things that kind of make us sit up and pay attention are really crucial. But I mean, it goes through a reading process, so multiple people read it, give comments, kind of say what they think about it. Like it's not something where it's just like, oh, it spoke to me, so therefore it got there, right? It has to speak to a plurality of our staff and readers. And yeah, sometimes it is like, okay, I love this, so I'm going to shepherd it through there. But of course, right, everybody has to weigh in, and that helps us kind of see how we can direct things and edits in terms of like where we're going. So yeah, it's really great. Yeah, does anyone have questions?
Can the staff ask questions of our writers?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, cool. There's so many like amazing pieces in this issue, and it's the poetry side and the prose side don't have look into their choices. So it's cool to see like some crossover and topics and themes kind of come through, because that's really happening organically without any planning. I had a question for Lana. Your piece was one of the first that we selected on the prose side for the issue, and I'm curious if it came to you like you had a sense of the shape of it and you knew what you wanted to do, or how you kind of found the shape for it, because it just moves in and out of time really beautifully. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about its origin story.
That's a really good question, I guess. So originally, I am working on a memoir about my time in the massage parlor business. And originally it was actually like more of a scene that was embedded within a chapter. But it's a very distinct memory to me that night. And it just kind of always felt to me that it almost seemed like an orphan piece in that chapter. And I felt like there was maybe a way I could work with it to make it more of a complete piece, even though it was always going to be a flash essay. It was obvious to me because it was like such a brief moment in time. So I kind of like took it out of that chapter, and then I just fiddled with it enough, I guess, to make it cohesive in that sense. But I think it works really well in that format, much better than it did as part of a longer piece. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great.
Where are you in the writing stage of the memoir, Lana? Because it sounds super interesting. Yeah, I'd love to read more of your prose.
That's a good question. I guess it depends, like who you ask. So I'm doing this as part of an MFA program. So I'm just sort of heading into my second year of the program. So I would say that I'm maybe like 50 to 60% done the manuscript. I do have an agent, and we are hoping to start shopping it around later in the fall to publishers. Yeah, it's a as I'm sure lots of you know, it's a really big undertaking to think about writing something of that like length and depth, especially when it's based on sort of like these memories from years and years ago that you then have to like piece together into some kind of a narrative that makes sense. So it's ongoing. But yeah, fingers crossed. I'll keep you guys posted.
Hey, good luck to you. Absolutely. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add something because I always love these readings and hearing everyone speak. And I think it's so interesting to see like kind of the difference between reading something, like hearing someone else read it and you reading it like in your head, like going through submissions. But I just wanted to say that, yeah, like I feel like people don't know this as much, but like at CR, we receive a lot of submissions. And like this issue, I think, at least on poetry side, probably, I know, in fact, we definitely received at least 1,200, if not more, for this issue based on the weekly counts. So at least on poetry side, I can't speak for prose. It was extremely competitive. So you should really, really count yourself special, and you're writing really, really, really special to get to this point. We were very, very impressed. And as a whole, I feel so honored to be able to promote all your work. And just to answer Joan's question, yes, I feel like we do need a poem on that. But yeah, so yeah, I just want to say thank you so much again on behalf of poetry. We are really, really honored that you trusted us with your work.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And for sure, yeah, that is why we have so many readers, Lana. I mean, we also want to hit different demographics and viewpoints, right? We don't want it to just be, oh, I like this, therefore it's published, or oh, the same demographic of people liked it, so therefore we're gonna, it's very, very important to us to have a diverse reading staff, because even if, for instance, one person says, hey, but I have this concern, right? Sometimes that's something that gets plugged up the editorial chain, and then we're like, oh yeah, that should really be a concern, right? Everybody has different lenses, different things they notice when they read pieces, and that's what helps us make the pieces really shine. I mean, they're already great when they come in the door, and hopefully when they go out the door, they're even better. I have a question for Jessie. Hi, I saw that you studied art history, and also that you're a florist. And I feel like there's a lot of kind of visual elements and like really, really specific things that are intertwined, both in the portrayal of the tulip and the artwork that's kind of being described. So can you talk a little bit about your process and kind of how this poem came to be?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking, and I feel so honored to be part of this issue. I've always been interested in the history of tulips. I think I read a book, a novel like 10 years ago that first stoked my interest in it, but I've been a florist for close to 20 years, and tulips nowadays are kind of like not that sexy, not that exciting, but knowing that history in in the Dutch Renaissance time period, I've always loved them. They've always been one of my favorites. And I had this idea where I wanted to do kind of a suite of poems that were all about flower histories, because flowers have a lot of really interesting ways that they connect with human history. And usually it's like medicinal, or the way that they're tied to ceremonies around birth and death and marriage and stuff. But the tulip is so interesting that it has this like economic history in the Netherlands. And so I kind of started there. I think I wrote it in the springtime looking at some tulips, but yeah, it kind of wrote itself. I've had all that history in my head for a long time, and then I just let it flow. But thanks for asking. It was fun to write, and it's so exciting to have it published.
Yeah, thank you. That was really illuminative. I think that that ending, right? Isn't it hard enough to push through the soil to come back every year? I mean, we're a magazine for stubborn writers, so I think that really aligns neatly with our mission, right? The tulip grows after it's cut. There are so many strong lines, and there's so much emotional resonance in your poem. So thank you for sharing about your process and kind of how it all just came out. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anything else for our readers, our staff, our authors? Anybody can ask a question, so please don't be shy. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Mike, because you didn't read yours, I just wanted to say how much I loved yours, because I didn't get to clap for you. So loved it.
Thanks so much.
I have a question for Abdul Jalal, who unfortunately he had a internet glitch and wasn't able to hear the reading of his piece or the comments that you guys all made about his piece. So I just wanted to ask, because like I see, obviously there's a main character in this poem, but the supporting characters, meaning like the parents and the brother, have a really like intimate level of development. So I was just wondering, like, what was the inspiration, behind that, or how were you able to craft like their personas?
Oh.
Were you able to hear that question?
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I'm sorry. I'm actually not at home. I'm at work, and I have a very, very bad network. But maybe you could manage. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. I've had the question. actually, the reason for that piece was that I had this friend, a very close friend of mine, that his brother joined the Boko Haram, and he got killed. So there was this time we had this conversation about the whole reason why people join Boko Haram, and stuff that had to do with Boko Haram and the whole thing. So I had this story of something like, I just changed a bit of a little things, like very, very little things in the piece. Like, it's more of like a true life story. of someone that joined Boko Haram and left his family and got killed. So I didn't want to actually capture everything that had to do with the stories of the family, and so I tried to give it a kind of picture that although I asked for the family's permission to write the piece, but the piece is not actually like 100% what happened, but it's basically the whole family, the brother, the mother and the father and the person that got killed is actually real.
We really appreciate that, Abdul. Yeah, there's so many powerful images, just the way that the voice pronounces these things. Like he joins the dance of jihad, the sadness flitted on my mother's skin like a moth. There were so many strong descriptions that really just kind of stunned, and the poem really earned its length. Like we read a lot of longer poems, and it's like, after a while they kind of start losing something. Like this poem just built and built, and we need to find a way to bury him in a cemetery far away from our hearts. Just the first time I read it, I was like, oh my God, can we please publish this poem twice? But yeah, thank you for sharing your work.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And we appreciate you coming in from work too. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions, thoughts?
I'll ask one more. Okay. Since we're on the topic of poetry, Joan, I would love to ask you a question about your poem. I think it's going to really touch a lot of people. It's so powerful. I second the goosebumps that Maria mentioned she got when you read it out loud. I find it so different to hear it than to read it even. So I know it's probably was a very difficult poem for you to write, so feel free to go into as much or little detail as you want. But can you talk a little bit on how it came to you, if you knew the direction it was going, or what kind of started as the seed that you built upon?
That's going to be a really hard question for me to answer, just because it's one of those poems that I feel like came from the deepest part of my gut, but also from someplace else. As I was writing it, I think I started with the line, "My sister was an asshole and now she's dead," because my sister took her life in 2017 after she lost her child to suicide. And I was so angry at her because I won't go into the circumstances of it, but I held her responsible for a while. And I was very angry with her. And then people were angry with me for being angry with her. And there was so I had this line repeating in my head, like, I'm allowed to feel this way. I am allowed to feel this way. And I needed to write a poem, not only about that, but about, I don't know, just this general feeling like there are all these things that we don't say. And as someone who grew up as an evangelical Christian in a very traumatic experience of a church, and also as a Korean American daughter of an immigrant who's also multiracial, there are just so many things going on in my life where I felt like I couldn't say this, I couldn't do that. By saying the truth about something, I was somehow insulting someone else, when I was just kind of like, it's just the truth. I'm not trying to insult anybody. I want people to speak the truth about me. I don't, It doesn't bother me, for example, what my children know about me, and I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she is very much like me, where, she brings stuff up and she's like, remember when you did this? I'm also in recovery. I'm a recovering addict. So she'd be like, I still have the Serenity Prayer memorized. And she would just, and I'm like, look, all I have, this is the life that I have. Like, this is what I have to offer you. It's your job probably to be pissed off at me, I guess, because you're my daughter and that's what we do. But this is all I've got. And I just needed to get that out in a way that felt good to me. The way that it came out, I honestly don't know where that came from. I could talk about process and for a lot of my other poems, but this one is really hard for me because I just think it built up so long, and then one day it just kind of all spilled out like that. And I really, really appreciate where it landed, and this particular issue with the editors that loved it and took it. So thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Joan. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of poems come from, or writing really comes from these places that we don't exactly know how to name or kind of show a distinct lineage. So I really appreciate the answer that you gave. Kind of our last call for questions, I guess. I don't want to push anybody. Yeah, we have some wonderful readers here. We have Lindy from the prose side, Reese, who is on the poetry side, and Praise, who is also on the prose side. I think we have a new reader, Bronwyn, who just came on board, right? So it's always great to see that. And yeah, it's just been really wonderful. Mike, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about where Outside of Culture came from? Because it's such an innovative form, and it's something that, like, I think that we had never really seen before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, initially it came because I was studying for the LSAT, and then actually, I actually had a lot of fun doing it. So I thought, and then my mind started wandering around. I'm like, well, can I make a story out of it? And then what I really liked about the LSAT was that it wasn't really a test of like your knowledge or how much you really know about the law or stuff like that, but more about like how well is your reasoning structure or your logic. So I thought, well, it would be kind of cool to kind of make a story that embodies the assumptions and the logic in the test, but then also have a real, I guess, like a real world connection and impact to it. Because like the issue with the LSAT is that a lot of the scenarios they give you are really not that real. So I thought it would be funny to just like an experiment to kind of give like a real world twist to the structure, and then it was a pretty cool experiment to write about, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, absolutely, right? It's supposed to test your reasoning, not really your knowledge about anything, but kind of your ability. But for sure, it's very kind of nonsensical. And I think that using that frame to critique othering in writing workshops was something that really spoke to me personally as an Asian American person who has been in those workshops. But also just, I mean, there's humor, it's cutting, there's so many things happening. And right, sometimes a tonal shift, like a really abrupt one, doesn't work. But in this case, it really did, right? Because we think, oh, it's about this. And then, oh no, it's actually about that. And I think that was one thing that we discussed when we were talking about whether or not to accept the piece and what could be like kind of changed, it was like, does that work? Or is it too abrupt? Is it like, oh, I fell off a cliff and something else is happening? So yeah, it was really, really informative. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being part of Chestnut Review. We want to support you. So please tag us if you get any collections or other things published. If you publish something that has your piece in it, we offer some kind of discounts and perks to contributors with some of our initiatives that we're doing. And, we just want to hear from you and keep in touch and welcome you into the Chestnut community. So anytime that you need anything, if you see any problems with your piece or anything that you want us to change, please just reach out and let us know. We can make little adjustments because I know that sometimes, there's like little things that can get missed. So we want you to be really happy about the presentation of your piece and also to feel like you're a part of our little Chestnut community. Thank you so much for being here. Staff, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been, as usual, just absolutely wonderful. Does anyone want to say anything before we close?
Thank you.
Just keep being stubborn. Keep being a stubborn writer and keep fighting for it. And also send anyone you know who you think writes well or writes in any way, because well is subjective, and I've learned that very much about my own writing. So if there's anyone you think would make a good CR contributor, I should say, let me rephrase that. Send them our way, either to poetry or prose, and we'll be happy to read their work. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. All right. Happy Saturday, everybody. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.